everybody, welcome to another episode of Comix Rant. I'm your host, Arvin Bautista. This is episode 15. And for this episode and the next few episodes coming up, I'm going to talk about my fan art that I did for Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I probably already lost some of you guys after I just said that. And you guys are like, forget this, dude, I'm out. But I'm here to share my love for the movies and the drawings that came out of it that were inspired by the movie. I'm not here to hate on anybody or start like some crazy war or whatever. In fact, that's kind of the backstory for some of these drawings and the drawings that I've been doing as a DC fan. When Zack Snyder started making the DCEU, right, with Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman and so on, and Suicide Squad came out, Wonder Woman, all that kind of stuff. It seemed that there was a pretty bad backlash against those movies, and it just got worse and worse as the years went by, and everybody just started pitting, themselves, and everybody became a Marvel fan, and then I was the only DC fan, or at least that's what it felt like. I was the only DC fan around, with all my friends, and people would look at me funny when I would talk about it, and they'd think I'd be a raving lunatic for loving the movies. In the beginning, like as a fan, of course, it's hard to hear that, right? It's hard to hear when basically everybody was saying the DC movies were horrible. Fans and critics and just regular like people that never even read comics or cared about superhero movies would have the same opinion. It's if you hear it from everybody after a while, it gets kind of tiring. A few DC fans would go online and start defending the films, and all this crazy stuff would happen. And for a time I was like that too. I would get lit up on, get triggered, and I'd jump in there and I'd start defending the franchise and all this stuff. Oops, sorry, I just hit my mic. As a fan, and after a while, I gotta tell you guys, it's tiring to hate something, or when I was in it, I'd kind of get a little bit too much in it. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't me. You can't keep that up, right? Like if that's not in your personality, it's not in mine. I just couldn't do it, right? I can't keep on getting angry at everything and, I'm just trying to hate back. Like that's no fun. What use is that, right? So what I ended up doing was I'm an artist, and the way I can show appreciation for something I felt was to draw fan art for the thing, right? For Zack Snyder's Justice League. And so I was drawing a lot of that stuff for Inktober, actually. I would be drawing like DC fan stuff for my drawings. And, this set of drawings that came out, I was super excited because I made it after Zack Snyder's cut came out. Nobody really thought this was going to happen. But it's awesome. It came, I was afraid that that I would have to like it, right? Because I've been fighting for it for all this time, right? I've been excited for it all this time. But you know what? After I watched it, it's just awesome. Like I don't have to try to explain why it's good to anybody. It just is. Like in my head, I am satisfied, and that's all that matters, right? Like if you like something, like it. And that's how these drawings are, right? Like I liked the movie, so I wanted to draw something for it. Anyway, so Comix Rant is usually structured in two parts. The first part would be talking about some comic books that I like, that inspire me to try to get me all jazzed up in making my own comics. And then the second part would be talking about my work in process, right? how I'm inking something, how I lay out something, blah, blah, blah. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out comics that I feel informed Zack Snyder's Justice League and talk about those. So that should be pretty cool. The first book that I was thinking would be Injustice, Volume 1, by Tom Taylor, Jeremy Rapak, Mike S. Miller, and like a ton of other artists. Anyway, let's start the show and we'll talk about Injustice. Okay, so when I got to read Injustice, it was, I think, already a few issues in, and I may have started reading it because it was free on Comixology. So I was reading the digital version of this, and I got hooked. Tom Taylor did an amazing job writing these characters, and if you don't know the backstory on Justice the video game, it's about, well, it's all DC characters fighting each other, and it's kind of set in this alternate universe where Superman has gone bad. And, you know, as a Superman fan, I did not really think that was, like, you know, how could you write something like that? Because Superman is innately not that character to become like this dictator, tyrant kind of guy. I borrowed this from my public library, by the way. I own these in digital from when I was reading them on my cell phone. I got a lot of memories of this because I was at Zynga. I was working at this video game company called Zynga, and I had been moved to this other team. I moved twice already prior to this because my initial game had gotten canceled or was kind of downsizing, sunsetting. So I moved to another team. And then from that was also kind of getting sunset. And I was moving out of there too. And so I moved into this other team that I didn't really know anybody. I was very fortunate to still have a job, but I didn't really know anybody. They had their own camaraderie going on, and they were very nice, very friendly, and they tried to include me, but, you know, it just didn't quite gel. You know, those guys are great. I'm just a jerk. So it didn't quite work out. Not like they hate me. Anyway, so that was a little bit too much backstory, wasn't it? But anyway, so during lunch break, I kind of ate lunch by myself. I know it was kind of sad, but I kind of liked it because I had Injustice to look forward to. And, I really couldn't wait. So it came out once a week, and it was 99 cents. And I'm just a huge nerd, so I could totally eat my lunch alone and read Injustice comics. I know, totally nerdy. So these books the way they were set up digitally was that they'd give you half of it, or maybe I think it was over here, and it would be one screen of your phone, and that's how I would read it. Which is strange because I'm such a purist about reading things on the page and how it's laid out. But I think the way that they structured the stories, they kind of understood that this would be shown this way. So the artists were pretty good at following that format, and it wasn't too obvious that they were doing this so that they could print it later on. And I was totally fine with it. I would get an issue for 99 cents. And I think it had 99 cents would give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 pages of a book, right? And I think a monthly book around that time was 24 pages. So, you get a third of a book, which would add up to $3 once you got the whole issue. Totally fair. I think it was actually $3.99 at that time. This could have been a $2.99 book, but either way, it ended up being pretty fair for me, and I kind of like being able to read it on a weekly basis. So it happened, the way the story starts is it's kind of is actually the way the story starts. Let me get my thoughts together here. Is that it shows you what's going on. You are in totalitarian state, Earth, basically, ruled by Superman. Sounds familiar? Yeah, because that's kind of like what you saw in Batman versus Superman, where Bruce has the nightmare vision, which is a whole lot crazier than this. Of course, it's like totally desolate, very Mad Max. But he has like troops, Superman troops. He's waving his Superman symbol as, you know, these kind of negative feeling kind of flags. And then it will flash back to 5 years ago before all of this stuff happened. So this actually takes place in the video game reality, right? Where Superman is already bad. And then this book is 5 years ago. This volume is 5 years ago. So Superman is still, this is technically still the Superman that we know. So he's still a nice guy. You know, he's married to Lois. And in this very first sequence, this is the second page. You already have the reveal that Superman is having a child. Lois is pregnant. That is very familiar. I don't want to, I hope you have watched Justice League, the Zack Snyder Cut, and that you've read this book. If not, turn this off and do all those things and then come back. But this is basically kind of what they were hinting at in Justice League, right? There's a scene where Lois opens up the nightstand next to her, and there's like a pregnancy test. And Zack Snyder has already talked about like how he wanted, if he had a chance to make more Justice League movies, he would like to tackle this story about Lois being pregnant and all this kind of stuff. He's definitely got his own ideas going on in the movies, but this is just kind of like a nice it seems like a nice springboard for where Zack Snyder, Chris Terrio, and all those guys kind of evolved their own story from. And I love that, you know, like it has basis in the comics, but it's not exactly like the comics. You know, this is them having a good moment, and Batman and Superman are good buddies, right? They're good buddies here, and he gives him the story that he wants Batman to be his godfather, yada, yada, yada. Another parallel that I see is here's Lois and Jimmy, and if you see it in BVS, Jimmy Olsen gets killed, like in the first few minutes of that movie, which everybody hated. And that's exactly what happens in Injustice. He gets shot. You don't even see him quite get shot. You know, there's arms and dead bodies falling down. He gets shot by the Joker. You know, I found that interesting. There would be a parallel to that in BVS that was in the comics as well. And then, you know, Lois is missing. Superman goes nuts. He asks for Batman, all this kind of stuff. And it's such a great setup. There's Doomsday in it, which is also in BVS, but, you know, I'm not directly saying this is, that they took this story and then put it in BVS, but it's kind of cool to read, this book and then see all these parallels that are going on, that was set up in BVS and Justice League. And, you know, you guys should really read this book. It's got some killer, like, things going on with Lois dying, which is also what sets off Superman, what is in Zack Snyder's Justice League, right? Like, there's a scene where he's carrying Lois's body. In BVS, Superman's talking about like how Batman didn't do everything that he could to save her, and this is actually also in this story later on, not in this issue. But you know, all these things have been set up. There you go, pregnant Lois Lane and dead. Yes, it's quite dark, and this is setup that's needed. Because, like I said, I'm a Superman fan. There's nothing that could possibly be done where Superman could become this, you know, evil character. But Tom Taylor does it so well that even I have been fooled. Like even I was on board and hooked for months reading this stuff, and Superman, basically Metropolis gets nuked, and BVS also has a nuke in it. Metropolis gets nuked, so Superman has literally lost everything, and this is where he's not quite exactly executing everybody, but he does shove his hand in Joker's chest. Yeah. So yeah, this isn't your dad's Superman stuff. But that is also in BVS, where Superman pushes his hand through Batman in his nightmare sequence. A little side note here is Tom Taylor has such a good grasp on the characters that you totally buy in on the reasoning that's going on. Like, obviously there's one with Superman, but he has a side story here with Harley and Green Arrow, and it's a great story. It's just full of character, and it's like he understands who these people are and how they work together. At least, when I was reading this, I was totally so hooked on what was going on. Superman is trying to save the world, right? He's going around trying to save the world and all this kind of stuff. They throw a bunch of artists onto the book. This was very cool when I read this, because I didn't read this at the same time I watched Justice League. It was like a few years. So for this episode, I read through it again. And this is like an awesome sequence, which is him flying through this drone that got shot by the U.S. Military, and Superman stomps it. And it's like this exact same sequence that's in Batman versus Superman, when he does the same thing. He literally flies through a drone, and it's actually from this point of view as well, which is wild to see it. The Kents get kidnapped. Martha does in BVS. There's actually a lot of parallels to this book, from this book to BVS. And this Flash in Injustice looks like that armored Flash in BVS in Justice League, right? Cyborg. I remember there's like a cool. Oh yeah, I love this drawing of this ape. It's a cool. I don't know. It's just a cool drawing of an ape. Just had to stop and tell you that. And like what I was saying, there's a bunch of artists that are on here so they can meet the deadlines. And it kind of works. This was one of my favorite ones, was David Yardine, I think is his name. But it looks great. Like, he's got a really nice Wonder Woman here. And the colors, I think, are by him as well. And there's some cool flat colors that he'll use, and it looks great. It stabs Ares in the chest. So this Wonder Woman is kind of like Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman movie style, right? She's totally like warrior. So it even informs some of the other movies as well. And, she's smashing tanks and stuff like that. There's a scene in World War I that she does the same thing. Ares is here. All these things that the movies, the Snyderverse is pulling from. Aquaman is totally hardcore. It's not as Jason Momoa hardcore, but, he's sending in, like, he's kind of behaving like Orm in here. And it's all just, it kind of it gives color, or it's what gave color to the Justice League movie by Zack Snyder, the Snyderverse, all that kind of stuff. And then he'll have moments where it's like a spotlight on the Flash, which is also great as part of storytelling. It takes a little break from the overall big picture story. There's even part of the story where Batman kind of cracks because, I'm going to spoil it for you, but Nightwing, Robin, Dick Grayson dies. So, Zack Snyder has also mentioned that the Robin in his movie that died was actually Dick Grayson. It's not a direct pull from the modern books, but it's definitely influenced the stories, or the backstory that he's alluding to in the Snyderverse stuff. Woo, going through Solomon Grundy's chest. That can't be fun. But yes, so like all this stuff. Here's David Yardine again, and I like his art. And a few of these artists come back, or actually stay through. Like Mike S. Miller comes back, I think even all the way to year 5. Tom Taylor hangs on for the first 2.5 years. And then Brian Buccellato, I think is his name, takes over. And I actually like the Tom Taylor run. Buccellato does a good job trying to pick up, the kind of pace that was set by Taylor, because it, like I said, like this was originally digital, so a quarter of the book comes out as one issue in digital, right? So that means he would have to have a pretty awesome hook within the first 10 pages, which was this: Jimmy gets shot, and this is an example. Jimmy gets shot, and hey, it's the Joker's there. So then the next issue starts off with this, and there's another pretty sweet cliffhanger, so to speak, for the digital version, which I think was Doomsday. That's a pretty big deal. And then, the next one. So, the pace of the book, the comic, when you read the issue, is quite fast and tight and exciting, right? So because once you split it up in the digital version, it needs to also leave you with a good hook for the next third of the book. So it moves at a really nice clip, really fast clip, actually, that Tom Taylor sets up pretty nicely, because he can still do some nice character-centric stories like this one with Harley and Green Arrow, but still keep you hooked. And that's not easy. That's not an easy thing to do. I'm more aware of it because I read it digitally when I read it now as one comic. But anyway, those were some of the things that I saw that were similar to what was in the Snyderverse books. It's my Snyderverse book. The Snyderverse movies from Batman vs. Superman and Justice League, for sure. Like, this was one of the resource materials I'm sure that Chris Terrio read, and Zack Snyder. And I'm pretty sure Jeff Johns, whether you love him or hate him, right? Like, he for sure had this to show Zack Snyder and the creative team as something to pull from. Injustice was one of the biggest sellers for DC at that time. I don't think anybody really knew that it would do something like this, but it was an amazing run. It's an amazing book. Tom Taylor really put himself on my favorite writer list, because he was able to pull off a comic book, video game tie-in, story and make it really good. I don't really expect anything from these kinds of stories, but it's become one of the top books in my head, and not exactly something that modern audiences can get on. And I can tell, because they would say that the DC universe is very dark and all this kind of stuff. But, that's the kind of books and stories that I liked, even when I was a kid, right? Dark Knight Returns, The Watchmen, those things were dark, right? That's not happy, jokey and one-linery kind of stories, which are also fun, but that's just not how they are. That's not how Injustice is, and that wasn't how the Snyderverse movies were set up to be, and I love them for that. Anyway, give this book a shot. It's really good. And let's go to the drawing portion of Comix Rant. See you in a bit. So the first thing that really stood out to me from the Snyder Cut when I was watching it was the new design for Steppenwolf. And, I saw images of this guy online, and, it was kind of crazy and awesome. Saw the concept art. it's fantastic. It's just so different. But actually, we got hints of it in Batman versus Superman. But I had no idea how this thing was going to work, how this design would work in motion. And I knew it would be good. I just didn't know how. Especially seeing the metal plating and how complicated it was and all that kind of stuff. But they pulled it off really, really well in the movie. And it's like this breathing metal plating. That's all spiky. That's like this kind of crazy, reminds me of like a tricked out 90s, Rob Liefeld design that was just nuts, like a image design for this character. But it was cool because it kind of pushed the heaven and hell and the gods theme that's been running through since Man of Steel and all these movies. So what I did for this drawing was, I didn't quite I drew this before I saw. Wait, did I draw this before I saw the movie? No, I'm totally on crack. I drew this after I saw the movie, but I didn't quite understand how the armor worked. So I definitely had to look through photos, and you can see me kind of tracing over it, but not really. It's kind of hard to trace over this stuff. So I kind of did this mix of kind of making it like a graphic shape, and even the way the lines and the plating falls on his head is a different. It's a different look than like a realistic look. But with all the shadows and all that kind of stuff applied, it kind of gives it a more dimensional quality. Basically, long story short, I was making it up and kind of like trying to go through the feeling of this armor that I really did like. When it was lit and all that kind of stuff, it just looked so good. So I was using that still as reference, and kind of like turning it off and then kind of trying to work off of memory, and also like wrapping my head around the shape of his horns. It's not just like how I drew it, and you'll see I'll do like a bunch of corrections later on. But I'm trying. It's like as I'm drawing, I'm also figuring out just how this looks like in 3D. And I've always loved drawing segmented metal. Colossus was one of my favorite characters. I think I mentioned that in a previous episode, and just all that kind of stuff. Like metal arms that Doc Ock had and all that kind of stuff. The Anti-Monitor, his final form, had like this segmented armor. It was just the thing to do. And in these drawings, in this one in particular, I was writing down one of his quotes, like one of the things that I do remember him saying, which was "No protectors here," and that was from the trailer. I mean, it's in the movie, but that the first trailer that came out for Justice League had his voice over saying "No protectors here," and I thought that was kind of cool. Like this ominous thing that, okay, we're ready to attack. When I built this whole thing and I put the font on his chest, the way this is looking right now, it looks like he's got this awesome "No protectors here" t-shirt as I start. And then I kind of carve out the spikes and the metal plating from him. But this way, it was easier for me to keep in mind that I need to make the font, the type, legible. Because now I'm just cutting in white shapes. And like I was saying, I didn't quite understand how his armor worked. So this is all kind of like made up and kind of as I would reference other pictures of him, that's what it would be like this blend of reference stuff and what I just thought it looked like in my head. This was like one of the pieces I drew trying to share my excitement for this crazy looking character. He was getting bashed a lot online because of the way he looked, but I thought he looked kind of cool. And by the time I watched the movie, I was right. He looked really cool and still one of my favorite things in the movie. And if you watch it, you'll notice he has like this purple highlight, or there's like a purple light that is reflected in his metal almost in every scene, and it's kind of cool. There's no purple in the scene, but it makes him stand out, and I kind of like that color. So here I'm just cutting out pieces and also trying to figure out, like, should I just leave it black, right? Like, and not, it's like a balancing act. Because the armor is so complicated that it will be really easy for me to lose that text on his chest. And what I'll end up doing is, instead of stopping and trying to figure it out, I just keep drawing. I keep drawing, and I'll pick certain parts of the drawing that I know how it should look. And that's why I'm like jumping all over here. And then right now I'm fixing his horn, because I realized, like, it's not like this U shape that I drew. I see more pictures of it, and it's kind of like this sharper, two-sided, like kind of scythe-looking thing from his head. It's all made up because if you know this photo, and I think you might see it every now and then when I flip through it in this drawing, his horns actually don't make this silhouette. It's just I chose this because it was clearer. So it might not be accurate, but it keeps my silhouette for him clearer. And hopefully I can get away with it, that no one's going to call me out. And now that I said that, you guys are probably going to call me out. So, like, see how I jumped down and put markings on the font as I'm trying to figure this out? Like, I was trying to make it like this, those exploding exclamation text bubbles, or I don't know how to describe those, where, they're like jagged in shape. And I figured I could kind of do that here. But, I'll try to kind of like fix it up a little bit so it's not too obvious that that's what it is. And if you notice here, so on his left horn, it looks a certain way, the way I rendered it. On his right horn, you'll see it's more just like these kind of lines. And again, this is not accurate to the way the character was designed, but I liked how those lines turned out, so I kept it. And that's why, it's not quite symmetrical. Even on the side of the back of his head, it's like this paneling that I just kind of went with. And it was fun. I think I would have driven myself insane trying to make it look exactly like the drawing or how his armor was. And now I'm adding color. So I'm blocking in colors with Procreate's brushes. I'm not trying to be precise with it, or even final with the color, right? Like, it's this brownie color. And then even the background, I kind of, instead of doing it in layers, sometimes I'm too lazy to do layers, and I just color all in the same layer. I know that's like a no-no, and it's easier to adjust hue and saturation, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes I just want to color things in, and I don't mind having to redo. It gets me in trouble most of the time. But it's kind of more organic. I work faster, I think better when I do it that way. and sorry for the pun, but I will paint myself into a corner sometimes doing that. So I'm adding highlights here, or bounce lights, I guess you could say, from the background, or whatever the technical term is that I was describing. Like he had this purple. I don't think I noticed it as I was drawing this, but I must have picked up on it subconsciously because it just seemed like the thing to do. And with these set of drawings that I'm doing, I'm trying to figure out how to color my black and white drawings so that I'm satisfied with it. I don't really render the form so much in my coloring, and sometimes I just don't want to. But I did want to have a more brushy look. So here's the final, and we get a little the close-ups of it, so you can see how I worked the colors in. Kind of just left it brushy in the background. So I guess to sum up, the way I color is still pretty simple, even though it's rendered a little bit. But it's usually a base color, a highlight, and a shadow. And that's usually all I play with. And this is the final image. Hope you enjoyed this episode and took something away from it. Keep drawing, and I'll see you on our next episode.